Hello everyone. Now we are going to get into the Roadside guidebooks that I've been writing over the years. There are a total of 9 of these books. Here's the first 3. Notice that's not on 4 down here. We'll get into that in a little bit. But these are the prices, US dollars. You can see the links to get them. They don't all have hardcovers. This one does. So let's go over them real quick. When I first discovered I could self-publish on Amazon, but it wasn't even Amazon then. Amazon didn't own it. Oh, was it Create? No, was it Create Space? It might have been Create Space when I started. This is the very first thing I wrote. This is the, I believe, 2nd edition. I think it says it on the inside. I've started putting it on the covers too, so you can easily discern it when you look it up. But I didn't do that there. Yeah, this is the 2nd edition, 2021. The original one, I think, was 2015 or 2016. Anyway, this is the first one I ever did. The original cover, back then, you couldn't just upload your own design. You had to use one of theirs and mess with it. You like put pictures in there, stuff like that. That one I think is still available, but I jacked the price up so high that no one would probably buy it. It's basically there for historical purposes. If you want to spend $100 on it or $250, whatever it is, go ahead, but you don't need to. Buy this one. I do that on occasion with some of my books, I think, over time, will be of historical value, so I don't discontinue them. This is one of those. All right, so this goes over the Huronian supergroup mostly in Ontario around Lake Superior. This is the map of the route with the stops. All these guidebooks have that. Okay, they have a map like that. I've added this in the later editions. This shows the volumes and the areas covered only for Canada. Some of them do go over places in the US, and we're going to get to those. Matter of fact, I think 3 or 4 of them do. But yeah, this is just for the Canadian ones, so we have that. We have introduction and basic information in these that are pretty standard for all the books. I have recently updated some of them. Like this has been updated, this one here. Not all of the stuff will always appear. Like this doesn't appear in any other one, I don't think. Some of this stuff, like this one does. This one's been redone, stuff like that. There'll be standard stuff in there. This is another standard one that's been redone. This stuff is a lot of, usually in standard, in my earlier books, with mentions of metric. I have since abandoned that for Canada and just stick with metric now. Except I think this I do still have miles because I do put it in my American ones as well. Yeah, this is not in another book, I don't think. But the stops, and I'll get into that later because this one doesn't have that. But the stops are like this. So the beauty of these books, more than anything, is it gives locations of these outcrops in decimal GPS. In the era of smartphones, which I am using to record this, of the iPhone 12, no, they did not sponsor me. If you just plug this number directly in, you might want to put a comma in there, make sure you put the minus, you have to do that. It will drop you right there, and then you can get directions. There's no need for this old way of doing guidebooks, which a lot of the old timers still do. That, you start out at this location, which is about right here, or start from this parking lot and go this way for this many miles, kilometers, whatever, but you better not pass the turn that you're not going to see, because if you do, then you got to turn around and go all the way back. And then you do find a turn. It's like, turn at that yellow barn. And the thing was written in the 70s. That yellow barn is long gone. Or turn down the gravel road, which is now a paved 4-lane road. Stuff like that. This, you don't have to worry about that. The GPS, unless that outcrop gets demolished, you're going to know exactly where it is. Now, the road to it might change or something like that, but that outcrop's always going to be there if you just type that in. And in the early days, what I did was I would just have 2 pages for an outcrop. So you could just open it and be like, oh, yeah, you have all your information here and your photos, diagrams, whatever. There might be one over here too, but it's right in front of you when you look at it. I haven't stopped doing that, except some of them I thought might have a little better info, so I had another page. What really annoyed me about the old books is they would sit there and they'd give you a big background about the area and put a bunch of pictures in there. I don't do that. I think there might be one or two exceptions to that. But I generally just put those diagrams I showed you for general concept. And they would put a picture in there and say, this is that whatever outcrop. And then you get to the outcrop and it's a totally separate bunch of pictures. It doesn't even mention that one. So if you didn't read it in the beginning, you're not going to know what cool stuff was there. So you don't have to flip-flop between this, pages, read the whole book or anything like that. You can start anywhere, type in that GPS, go, and you're on your way. That has not changed in any of my books, my roadside books. That's pretty much standard. And this, like I said, was my very first one. They are now all color-coded for Canada. Yellow was the first. And you can probably tell that from here. It wasn't always that way because I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this originally. Now, before I start railing off the rails too long, this is going to be a little longer one. This is my pride and joy that I wrote with Elisa. She went to Michigan Tech. She's now a professor at Reykjavik University. This does come in hardcover as well. I don't have the hardcover version. This is the second edition. This had a lot of stops added to it in the second edition. The first edition I think it's still available, but it's a lot thinner. Now, see, I go over the concept here. I started doing it by this time where you sit there. So I show you how to go through your phone and find it. It's not in that first one. But the basic thing is the same. Layout's the same. Right there. You have your, like this stuff in the beginning. You have your nodes. Like this stuff isn't in any of the other books. A lot of the stuff that's in this one is general information, is not in the other books. You have that there. Copper Harbor, because I actually redefined the Copper Harbor Formation and the Jacobsville Group. I had to change that there because the original is Jacobsville Formation. So you have some Bones Reaction Series. You have a very chronological time. Some of the stuff that's in other books is in there too. But generally, it's not Rift, how Rift forms. I think I might have that in one other book. But it's mostly roadside book. It goes through the Upper Peninsula. It's in 3 basic sections. I actually thought about breaking this out into other books, but I decided against that because actually people, and I'm glad I did, because people have actually, I think the Siemens Mineral Museum has some copies of these and stuff like that. But here it is. Here's the Upper Peninsula, and here's the first area of the book. And if there's a lot in a little area, I have an inset. Here's your second. Here's the third. Now, this focuses on the bedrock. Where's most of the bedrock? It's from Marquette West. So there's very little bedrock exposed this way that's accessible via roads. And, I try to go for stuff that's accessible most of the year and that just about anyone can get to. I know there's outcrops down fire roads, out in the middle of nowhere. I know this. I've been to them. But you will almost never see them in this book. All right, so yeah, that's how this is divided out. There's some parks in here, stuff like that. My old Jeep, he's gone now. So that's how this thing is divided out. There is a section for Marquette, because Marquette, being the beautiful, and I take you into a couple of the old touristy mines too, which are actually pretty good places to go. This is near Iron Mountain, so it's iron, and then I take you later to one that's in a gold copper mine up in the Keweenaw that's not that far from the cabin. But Marquette gets its own little inset. Sorry, I almost hit the camera section. Because Marquette has almost 3 billion years of geology exposed within the city limits. You'd be hard-pressed to find that anywhere else in the world. Sure, people love these exotic places to go. And go, oh, isn't this cool? Look where I am. But if you want to actually see the geology and want to see 3 billion years exposed, you go to Marquette, Michigan. You don't go to some really obscure place where no one ever goes. Yeah, I mean, it's good for documentaries and stuff like that and investors looking cool, but I'm a firm believer. I don't go there unless I have to go there. This does have one thing in it for historical value. This is a piece of float copper. What was that? 23 tons, I think the sign used to say. It's gone now. They sold it. It's, I believe, sitting on a street in China somewhere. At least it wasn't melted down. But to give you a scale of how big this is before I got fat. So this is in 2013. There's me sitting on it, and I'm 5'11". So that gives you, this is a copper nugget. It's not really an alloy or anything. It's almost, I think it was 90+% copper. It's copper country. So anyway, that's that book, and I'm pretty proud of this book. And I might redo it in 2025. There's a couple other outcrops I want to go to. Now, this is over 10 minutes, so let's get to these two. This is when I started doing this, I had no idea how many of these I was going to make. So I decided to make a series because Amazon lets you do that now. Back when I started doing this, that wasn't a thing. So this is in the Roadside, my Midwest Roadside series. This is book 1. The UP book is book 2. This is book 3. But this is not book 4 and this is not book 3. This is the Roadside part, Riverside part of Illinois. So it's in the series. This is not. This is a basic geologic background. And the reason why this was divided into 2 books is because at the time, there were several people who sat there and said the one that was assembled was kind of expensive and thick, and they thought it might be this way. And I actually liked it. I actually thought about doing that with this one, but this one has gotten so popular now it's never going to be 2 volumes. So anyway, so we have this. This is just Geologic History of Illinois, full color. It's not very expensive, as you can see. This one, it's a lot thinner than the second one. I have this on the back of both. We go over the basic present, a lot of concepts. This was written with me by a couple other people. Some of this stuff is done on GIS because this was originally going to be published via a publisher. But it just got so bad that I love publishers, but sometimes they just want too much and they're not clear. So I decided to do it myself. Yeah, so, you got stuff like this. It gives you the basic history, the geology of Illinois. I used to live in Illinois. So that's where this came out. And there's Chicago a long, long time ago. But this is the actual Roadside book. The blue cover has the same thing on the back. So these are also done through the Institute, but these aren't for fundraising. You get your inside map to show where to go. Now, a lot of the stuff in here, the information, it's all referenced. But the way you write guidebooks is you don't want to write them like papers. Although some people do. You put information in there and then you put, Smith et al. 2015 or whatever. I do start doing that later just because I was advised to do that. Although it's not necessary because I do technically have the references there at the end. It makes it hard for reading when you put that, Bob et al., in the middle of there, and it turns people off. See, these are not made necessarily for professional geologists. I want people watching this to buy this too. Yeah, there's some technical stuff in here, but I try to avoid that where I can't even explain that in most of these books. But here's just some stuff that you can look at. This one is not structured in that open it up to an outcrop way. It's the only one that's not. And that's because, like I said, it was originally going to go through a publisher, and that was the way they wanted it. So it's a little different. See, there's none of that stuff in there. It's not divided like that. It's more descriptive, but you will still get GPSs in there as well. So it's not going to take away from that stuff there. All right. But that's it for the first, we're coming out 14 minutes. That's it for the first 3 of these. And they'll be linked so you can get them. Let's move on to the next set.